Hey, what's up, guys? I haven't done a video in a few days, or it might have been a week or something like that. I've been really trying to post 2 videos a week, but I've been slipping the last few weeks. My wife's been due with our baby, and she's approaching the end of her pregnancy, or she was approaching the end of her pregnancy, and then 48 hours ago she went into labor. So we do have a baby now, have a beautiful baby girl, super lucky. We just got home from the hospital yesterday, so we're pretty much trying to get back in the swing of things. So I'm sort of surviving on fumes, But I got to make this video because I really want to stick to my goal of trying to do 100 videos this year. Got to stick with that. So I'm going to do this video, but after this experience, I just have so much respect for women going through that whole birthing process. And I know my wife didn't have an epidural or anything like that. So she was a straight rock star, which is pretty crazy. And I love being a dad. I think daddy is probably the best title I can ever have. And I never thought I would love having a family, and I just love it. So now back to the video. Let's get back to the video. I'm just a little bit of a happy dad moment there. But this video is going to be about why low carbs are the key to achieving autoimmune remission. And the more that I study, so I've studied a lot of different diets, a lot of different protocols, and every single successful healing diet that I've researched usually involves reducing carbohydrates. And that's especially complex carbs, so bread, sugar, you name it. And this includes that like GAPS, SCD, paleo, keto, Weston Price, or carnivore diet. And a lot of the times what it seems is it seems like the lower the carb count, the better the results. And many of the people that screw up on the diets that I just mentioned, they usually do so because what they do is they replace their old carbs for new carbs, and they do that through consuming more fruit juices, nuts, like a lot of baked nut goods. I know that when I first started a low carb diet, I went crazy on like peanut butter cookies, and before you know it, you're really actually stacking a lot of carbs, and that can give a lot of people problems. But there's a lot of other things. But either way, you find a way to replace your old carbs with new carbs. That's just how it works. But years ago, something that changed my mind is that I read a book. And I read a book that really helped me connect the dots. And before I get into the story about connecting the dots, if you don't really know my story, when I was first diagnosed early on, when I was looking for diets, the first diet that I found was the Scd Diet. So I found that diet and I did pretty good on it. But I knew right away that this probably wasn't gonna be long term for me, and that I was just gonna stay with the Scd Diet because I couldn't find a lot of people that were able to go back to a normal diet. If it seemed like a lot of the people that jumped on the diet, they had to stay on the diet to see good results, and if they jumped off of it or had cheat foods, that they usually had problems. But I remember when I was vetting the Scd diet, because I've sort of always been a skeptical dude. I don't believe everything that I'm told. I've always sort of been like that. So what I did is I grabbed the SCD book, I flipped it over, and I noticed that there was a bunch of testimonials in the back. So what I did is I did reverse searches and tracked a few people that did the diet, that provided the testimonials. And I found out that they were actually able to achieve remission using the diet, and hey, that's what I needed for me to actually believe that it was possible. And then after I proceeded to look for other options because I wanted to try something outside of SCD, I pretty much got like one of those big science fair boards, like a big whiteboard. So I talked any person that I talked to, any book that I read, I'd pretty much write down the things that they did, right? So I'd have this board I read everything that everybody did. So if it was like low carb diet, use this supplement, that supplement, did this, did that, I kept track of it, I plotted it down. And what I noticed is there was a lot of common denominators, but because I'm focusing on the low carb common denominator right now, that was the one that I seen the most. Most people like dramatically reduce their carbohydrates in order to overcome their autoimmune disease, like Crohn's and colitis. So I knew that had to be a key aspect of beating my IBD. Then I read a book, and I read an awesome book, and it really helped connect the dots. And this book was called Life Without Bread. Okay. And I think I made a video about this, and you can see, it was an animated video. If you guys are interested, you can check it out in the link, you can check it out in the description. But I'll sum it up in a nutshell. Okay, you got an author by the name of Dr. Wolfgang Lutz, and I think there was another PhD dude that wrote it by the name of Christian B. Allen. So they both write this, but it was based on the clinical experience of Dr. Wolfgang Lutz working with thousands and thousands of patients. And here's what he noticed. He noticed that reducing carbohydrates to 72 grams per day or under usually resulted in the elimination of insulin resistance, and that's pretty huge. And the carb count was key, not the kinds of carbs. So as long as you only ate 72 grams and under, it didn't really matter what you ate, you still improved your condition. And this is his clinical observation of 4 decades, not my random opinion. This dude knew a strategy that worked to improve autoimmune conditions like Crohn's disease and colitis in the 1960s. He wrote his first book in German. It's pretty huge, pretty awesome. Not like people reference this. And, I know early on in my healing journey, nobody was telling me about this book. So now let's shift gears here. So why do carbs mess up the gut? Well, according to Dr. Wolfgang Lutz, they secrete excess hormones. If your insulin's constantly jacked, it overstimulates the pancreas, and usually this leads to excess gastrin, or the production of excess gastrin, which leads to too much stomach acid. And eventually, the body pretty much becomes deaf to insulin, and you become metabolically broken. Some people might call this insulin resistance. So now, what are the benefits to switching to a low-carb diet? Well, some of the benefits are hormones normalize. You become metabolically flexible again. And you get less byproducts from sugar fermentation. This means less gas, less discomfort. And when you normalize insulin, you lower inflammation and you lower inflammatory markers. I think regardless of what diet approach you decide to take on your healing journey, because I don't know what diet you're doing right now, or if you're looking for options, I think that reducing carbohydrates is something that you should consider because it will likely improve your condition. And really, what do you guys have to lose? Regardless, what do you have to lose to say, I'm going to try for 30 days, I'm going to try to only consume 72 grams a day of carbs? What do you have? Hey, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose. And all you have to do is, download a calorie tracking program like MyFitnessPal or other options. There's plenty of options out there. That's the one that I think I used in the last few years was MyFitnessPal. Print out a calendar, and this is really important. Print out the calendar and try it for 30 days. Keep track of your daily carbs and make sure that you check mark each day that you actually complete. This is completely very important mentally, that you actually see that you're making progress. You also want to keep a daily journal of your symptoms and your progress. I know if I was doing this approach, I'd personally eat my carbs during dinner for the most enjoyability, because I enjoy my carbs at dinner. And I think my mental weapon to do this would be to think that every day I get a cheat meal. So I go through my whole day. If I stay on point, I get a cheat meal. I'm going to have a wicked dinner. I'm going to enjoy that cheat. And here's some tips with my insight and my wisdom. So this has nothing to do with Dr. Wolfgang Lutz. If I was doing this, I'd try to avoid high fat and high carbs at the same time, because this usually causes the insulin crash. We've all been there, and you can call that a food coma, call it whatever you want to call it. You also want to try to keep your carbs GMO free, because we know that GMOs are pretty linked to leaky gut syndrome via glyphosate, But if you slip up, who cares? If you go to a restaurant and eat something, who cares, man? It cares more. It's more important that the majority of your days are GMO free. And I think that the real objective of this carb reduction of consuming only 72 grams, but you can tweak it. Maybe it might be a little bit less. Maybe you can get away with a little bit more. It all depends on your situation. But I personally try to stick to 72 grams and under. If you have to tweak it under, do it. But I wouldn't go over, because that was the amount that his experience led him to have good results or favorable results. And that's the approach that I would take. Another thing is, don't waste your carbs on soda pop. Don't drink your carbs or candy. If it was me, I'd definitely rather have a Coke Zero or a Pepsi Max than a normal pop with 40 plus grams of sugar. Either way, I get it. I'm going to have aspartame or I'm going to have sugar. Both are pretty much a little bit toxic. But I know for me, one has less negative effects, and that would be having the aspartame, and then it still allows me to have a little bit of my cheats without affecting my carb count. And I think another thing you could do is if you go to a restaurant, make sure you look up ahead, check the menu out. A lot of online tools, online apps that you can look at your menu options so that you know when you're ready to order. And you don't have to check it out. It doesn't really have to be something that's inconvenient. You look it up, hey, I can order that, then you're good to go. Look at the online app. And I'm not sure if you guys prefer, because everybody's going to be a little bit different with the situation. Do you prefer starchy or do you prefer sweet? I'm personally a dessert guy. So if it was me, I'd rather be the guy that has meat, veggies, and a salad, and then be able to have a delicious dessert because, that's my poison. I love having dessert, whether it's apple pie, pumpkin pie, you name it. Just give me a good dessert and I love it. That's just me. You guys might think differently. Another side note is that if you're one of the people that a specific carb bothers you, and I find that for a lot of people, they have issues with corn. So if a specific carb bothers your gut that you know of, I'd probably try to avoid it for the first few weeks. And if you want to try to add it in, you can do it in at a later date, but I wouldn't include that in your carb count just in case, especially since you know that you might have an issue with it. And like I said earlier, this is an experiment. This channel is really about helping people with simple gut solutions and strategies that work for many people. I might not agree with everything that Dr. Letts says in this book, but that doesn't discredit his wisdom or his results, because I've sort of went beyond a lot of things. I've done a lot of research and trying to look at the best things of every book and the common denominators. It might not be 100% on point with every single author that I read or every single diet, but I'll definitely give credit where the credit is due. And I think if you're one of the people that's very frustrated with your current condition, or maybe you're not on a specific diet, or perhaps you're one of those people that constantly fall off the wagon, what do you have to lose to try this for 30 days? I think you have nothing to lose, but I think you have a lot to gain. Because I think the main point of this video is that you realize that carb reduction typically improves autoimmune conditions, and that's usually via metabolic improvement. If you've never paid attention to your carb count, you're probably going to hugely benefit from this experiment either way, because you're actually going to know how many carbs you consume on a daily basis. You can say, hey, I feel better at 70. Maybe I feel better at 80 or 90 rather than 200, because most people slip up and they consume way more carbs than they think. And I've spoken with thousands of people over the years, and I've always asked them about their diets. And you know what? They're like, I don't eat this. I don't eat that many carbs. And then what I ask them is I say, why don't you track it for a week or 2 weeks, and then we can talk further. We can see how many carbs you actually consume, or we can talk about your diet. And what happens? I end up talking to them, and they tell me, yeah, I ate more carbs than I thought. It's like, of course you did. You wouldn't be sick if you didn't, because I know that there's things that you're not telling me, and it might not just be because you want to lie to me. It's because you don't pay attention. Hey, I don't pay attention to every single piece of chocolate I have. And I don't know about you guys. I have a really addictive personality. So when I go to the closet, I take like one piece of chocolate, thinking I'm not going to be back. But I end up being back 3 or 4 times. And I do the same thing with chips. I do the same thing with anything that's in my snack closet. That's what I do. I end up back there 4 or 5 times. So there's no way for me to track that when I do that. Only way for me to track it is to not really do it that much, to be very specific on what I decide to cheat with. But I don't know if this idea is going to work for everyone, but I don't think if you don't try, you're never going to know. And for myself, I probably eat less than 72 grams for at least 5 days a week. But then on the weekend, so for 2 days a week, so 5 days I stay pretty strict, low carb, high fat. And then for 2 days, so 5 days low carb, high fat, and 2 days, that I enjoy. So I'm consuming probably a lot more than 72 grams a day. But at the same time, during those cheat days, I do taxing workouts. So I'm always doing at least 2 workouts. So whether that's a Friday, a Saturday, depending on my cheat days, I'm always doing 2 workouts. That way, carbs go right into the muscles in the form of glycogen, and then usually I have them. Try to make sure they're depleted for my Monday, and that just seems to be the best method that works for me. And I really want you guys to remember what I said about avoid high carb and high fat. Because that usually ends up with me on the couch and most people ending up in food comas. Because I watch people around me, if they eat certain things, they're like, yeah, they're laying on the couch and they're pretty much dead. You know, straight up carb crash. And another thing that I notice when I eat high carb, high fat, I end up feeling less than optimal. So I end up having like joint pains. I'll feel like sore in my joints. I might even feel a little bit mentally fatigued, not as sharp the next day. So just things to pay attention to. But I think for the most part, if you're going to consume, I think, higher carb, so if you're doing some of these cheat days or especially cheat meals, high carb, okay. Lower fat and protein you can pretty much consume without issues. You know, you can do this without, and then you'll actually feel pretty optimal, because then that way you're not going high fat, high carb. And another side note would just be to realize that high fat and high carb does not exist in nature. And if you don't believe me, go check it out. Any fruit, any vegetable, any meat, you're not going to find high fat, high carb. So those mixed macronutrients in high amounts do not exist in nature together, with one exception. And there might be two exceptions, but this is one really important exception. And that's in breast milk. And the reason that it exists in breast milk is breast milk is high carb and high fat. And that's I'll use the example of a human being. So an infant's born, it's consuming breast milk. Its main objective of that breast milk is to increase the size and help the baby grow. You know, your average baby increases its birth weight by 300% in 1 year. That is massive. Do you imagine, look at your body weight right now. Do you imagine increasing that weight by 300% in 1 year? So nature has a reason for why specifically we consume breast milk, you know, when we're young, to grow, because it helps us develop and it helps us grow quicker. Again, not saying I think that people should go high fat and high carb, but when you're looking around and you see so many obese people, it's probably one of the contributing factors. But either way, in this situation, you know, whatever you decide to do, experiment, tweak, fail forward, because eventually you're going to get there. And I think I'm really curious. So depending on how far you guys have gotten through this video, because I know everybody's attention span nowadays lasts for 3 minutes or less. It's true. I checked the stats. It is what it is. But I'm curious, how many carbs do you think that you eat every day? Have you ever kept track? Has this video sort of piqued your interest to maybe trying that 30-day experiment? And if you do try that 30-day experiment, can you get back to me? Can you let me know like how your results were? And I really care about the insight, because I really want to like improve my ability to deliver solutions to the people that are watching this solution. So if you can please do that, por favor, it adds so much value to me. I really hope you guys like this video. I'm really trying to share practical solutions and wisdom, because I think that there's a lot of experts out there, but I really think that a lot of experts, the problem is with experts is they exist in a vacuum where humans are perfect and there's not so many variables, but that's not how humans live. And they also exist in a vacuum where they think that their perspective is right. They don't take a bunch of things and they don't look at other perspectives when they're making decisions. And I think that that's why when you look at, let's say, allopathic medicine, so just mainstream medicine, that's a reason that they offer almost no results when it comes to, hey, they're awesome when it comes to like surgeries and putting you back together, but they're absolutely horrible in promoting quality of life and health and wellness. You know, they provide sick care, not health care. And I think that most people are coming to know this especially when they look to Google over going to their doctor, or when you go and visit your doctor and they pull up the computer and they do a Google search and you're like, man, this dude or this chick did 10 years or 12 years of university or college and they're looking up my condition on Google. It says something. It is what it is though. But there is some good ones out there, but for the most part, it is what it is. But I know for me, I would rather focus on wisdom. I would rather focus on people that have results. And you know what? You're really getting a chance to learn from their failures, to learn from their mistakes. The wisest people I've ever met, and it doesn't matter if you're on a job site looking at the best person on a job site, if you're looking at an athlete, usually those people learn by making mistakes, a lot of mistakes, and then tweaking and failing forward and improving so that they no longer make the same mistake, and then they make another mistake, or what I'd call a higher level mistake, and then they improve further. So that's what you have to do. But I would always focus on wisdom. I would focus on wisdom from people people that are able to really articulate something and make it simple. If you make something so complicated that it makes no sense, if somebody can deconstruct something that I say, the smartest person can spew a bunch of BS, but if you can deconstruct what I'm saying with one statement, hey, it is what it is. If I can't hold up to an argument based on what I'm saying, hey, I don't have a strong argument. It is what it is. That's just the truth in it. So I think when it comes down to the best diet for autoimmune disease, I think that it comes down to this. It's simple. It's not carnivore or keto or SCD or GAPS, because it comes down to it's the diet that you can sustain. Because if you can't sustain a diet, so if you're one of the people that you're constantly falling off the wagon because it's too strict, what's the point if you're always relapsing, you're always feeling crappy, you're always sort of going back into that flare state, that flare state? What's the point of doing it? Complete waste of time. I'd rather see a person do this diet than that diet, and say, hey, yeah, so if carnivore is too strict for you, go with something like keto. Do it. If you get to the point where you're getting no results and you ask me, I might say, hey man, you have a tough decision to face and you might have to jump on carnivore for a bit. Hey, but if you can hop on keto where you're including some carbs, or maybe you're not doing any of the diets that I mentioned and you're just doing this 72 grams a day and you feel awesome, do what works for you. You don't really have to be dogmatic about any approach. The only reason to think about being dogmatic is that if you don't have the results you want, if you're not feeling good, you have to question that maybe my actions are leading to the fact that I don't feel optimal or I don't feel perfect. That's when I'd look to say, hey, you might have to be strict. You might have to be more strict. And anybody that's emailed me or messaged me, that I can be pretty blunt. And I'm blunt because I care. So I'll tell somebody, yeah, you're eating way too many carbs. You're eating a lot of garbage. You're eating, maybe it's nuts, maybe it's anything. But I'm not scared to point out what I see. But yeah. So pick a diet that you can sustain, one that you can see yourself doing for the long haul, at least for a few months, to see that you can improve your condition. So if you guys have any questions about this, about any of the stuff that I've brought forward, man, let me know. I really want to make awesome videos. I want to make videos that are practical, that actually help people out. So if you have video ideas, let me know. I'll do a video as soon as I have some spare as soon as I have some spare time between my toddler and my infant that keep me super busy, because I'm a dad that probably has 2 tea parties a day because my daughter is a little bit high maintenance, but she just loves to play all the time. So she keeps me pretty busy. But yeah, send me a message. Let me know how I can help. Thank you so much, guys. My rant is over for the day. I love the support. If you guys like this video, you know what to do. Smash that like button. It really does help. Thanks a million.
Are you tired of feeling crappy? Get my free healing guide. Tips, tweaks, and hacks. Click the description for more information.